Hey. Alrighty. So I was having a thought. I just came from the gym. Don't pay me no mind because I look crazy. Because that's not important. I watched the Chris Brown documentary. It's My Life or something like that. I'm getting that totally wrong. But that's not the point. I watched the documentary and it was really good. It was really good. And an important thing about why I chose to go back to school for psychology is outside of the fact that I might be a little bit crazy, is that I believe wholeheartedly that we as a group aren't entirely represented in the way that we need to, right? We have this thing where I talked about this in the last video where the conditioning is that we are a certain way, that we are prone to aggression, that we are prone to, just being difficult. And essentially, we are the reason for our own adversity. There is a lot of that kind of undertone in what people of color, people of particular backgrounds, and certain structures like you're just a certain way, right? Typical stereotyping, prejudices, all of the things. This is this is an undertone that I kind of want to be intentional about learning more about so that I can take the experiences that I've had and the tools that have been useful for me and promote, build up, support people that look like me, people from the places that I have been, and just giving us a bit of hope, right? So, before I get into what I saw and what my deductions were with the Chris Brown documentary, I want to talk about anger. So, some time ago, a friend of mine and myself, we were walking and talking, and we were having a conversation about anger. And she took this very, very stern position. And I'm not mad at her for it because during the time, I agreed. She said, anger, that's a useless emotion, right? And in the context in which she made this statement, it comes from the place of anger has been the facilitator of so many really messed up things, whether it be some sort of discriminatory practice, some sort of justification for the mistreatment of a group, uh, abuse in a relationship of any type, so many different things. And essentially, it gets you so riled up, so worked up that even when you get really, really angry, you can kind of be stifled and stuck in that moment. You do things that you can't take back. There's destruction. It's all of these things, right? And I'm like, you know what? I get it. But we see all the time where people make the joke, please, I feel better because I cursed that such and such out and I went about my business, right? Like that we're not walking away with the frustration from a circumstance. And this is why people get that display of anger. Now, taking that in that context, I understood where she was coming from, but I didn't entirely agree on the basis that we wouldn't have anger if it wasn't a part of something. And this is probably nothing new, but this is what I started to digest and what I started to learn in this space, right? The brain is a very complex and naive thing, right? Think about it like if you tell it something over and over and over again, your brain will kind of believe it, right? This is how come we have things like affirmations and stuff like that, because at some point you're going to get up one day and this thought will be deemed true to you. Hence the last conversation that we had around conditioning, right? You blow a whistle when it's time for some food, the dog's mouth will salivate every time you blow the whistle because they have made a relationship between the sound of the whistle and the food. Human beings are not so far off. Of course, there's nuance in that statement, but conditioning and the belief of conditioning, the theory of conditioning, the art of conditioning, it resides in that thought process, right? So, going through that part and recognizing that it's complex, but it's simple, essentially, you frame your thought process, your pathway of thinking through your experiences. Oh, what's that? Juicy mouth. Sorry. You form your thought process through the experiences that you have had. Now, every experience will be, to some extent, compartmentalized, right? Makes sense, simple enough. Then we have chemical reactions. So we do understand that happiness, things like serotonin and dopamine, are responsible for these things, right? But we also know that chemically, serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, all of these things can be produced by a series of different routes. It's not just one thing, it's not just two things, it's several things. Because everybody's feel good has variety, right? Let's take that same methodology and let's talk about anger. Now, if we look at anger and what it stands for, why do we get angry? When you think about anger, outside of, violent things that might not make sense to us, don't try to make sense of the act. Think about the mind in which the anger is coming from. Anger is the first feeling, the first emotion that you respond to, or the response of, I think I could fight this. So, for instance, right, when a mama bear is outside with her cubs and there's a there's a male bear that shows up and he's like, "Oh, I like you, I want you," and he run down on her, but he knows that I'm gonna have to get rid of these kids. I don't want these kids. These ain't my kids. I don't want to deal with these cubs and so on and so forth. Mama bear is not smiling at the grizzly that's coming to run down on her while trying to kill the cubs. The first thing that mama bear might experience, what the fuck do you think this is? It might just be anger, right? So if you think about it, right, like let's say you get into a fight, you don't smile or laugh. A little bit, some crazy people might smile or laugh, or even if they display a smile, it does not mean that they have not experienced chemically what anger is, i.e., adrenaline. So what does that mean? There's a presence of a threat, and threat is not exclusive to physical danger. Emotional danger is also valid and true in the presence of a threat. Because why? If someone jumps out from a closet and they scare you, what happens? Your heart starts to race, your hands might start to shake, you might start to get hot. If somebody calls you out of your name and approaches you with hostility, what happens? Your hand starts to shake, your heart starts to race, your temperature might rise. So, chemically, the thing that happens when you are emotionally threatened and physically threatened is exactly the same. Not much different than the flight response, right? The flight response is very much like, I'm getting the fuck out of here because I don't think I like this. And so let's think about when people feel uncomfortable about taking a new step in life. That's an emotional threat. So what do? They avoid it. They walk away. They step away from it. They leave it alone. Now, they have a third one and they call this fawning. Fawning for me, I consider fawning negotiations. And when I say that it's negotiations, it's equivalent to you being threatened and you say, please don't hurt me, right? This is like a child crying, and there's nothing wrong with that. Innately, you're hopeful that nothing happens, but you are too overwhelmed to make a decision to go left, to go right, to fight, to run. Can you make this decision? You just hope that you get out of this situation, right? Not different than if you are struggling with straight stage fright, right? If a grizzly bear run down on you, they tell you to just kind of get down and hope that the bear don't want no smoke. And if you get on stage and you have immense stage fright, you will be afraid, and you may just freeze up, and you may not have the words, and you may struggle, and you say, "Oh shoot, I don't know what I'm gonna do." This is where anger has its presence, because anger is the proof that you perceive a threat. And because you perceive a threat, you respond with hostility. Now, when we look at that and we think about that, and they say things like, Black people are so angry, Black men are so angry, hostile, all of these things. But what we never consider is how often are we walking around and we just feel like we don't belong. We feel uneasy. We on edge. That we are walking around in a constant space of emotional threat. They say black women is so difficult. They don't do this, they don't do that. How often are we walking around underconsidered, disrespected, on edge, and in defense because we are seriously always under emotional threat? Now, I am not saying that there is not a space and opportunity for us to do what we call cognitive appraisal. Sometimes we have to have enough wherewithal to recognize that we are experiencing an emotional threat. And sometimes it is valid. Other times it may be overappraised. This is why it's important to understand that there is value in anger, but anger dysregulated turns into aggression, hostility, misunderstanding, and unfortunately for people like us, confirmed bias. Now, this is the first part of what I found interesting about Chris Brown's documentary. But I will be back because I would love to talk to you a bit more about how this piece will play into my next piece of understanding of his life, his conditioning, and how it inevitably led to that fateful night where things went really left, and some of the details that he shared and how he endured. So I hope this was entertaining. I hope it was interesting. I hope it was helpful. But in the meantime, have a good night. I'm going to go clean myself up so that I don't feel dog tired in the morning. Bye.